Welcome back, everyone. I'm the Battlecry Gamer, and today we're going to be talking about a pretty unique archetype in Battlecry. It's the Captain archetype, and it's essentially a different form of Beastmaster, only for people rather than animals, or beasts, I guess, which is really, really cool. Now, it's been a while since I did a video. I had to take care of my family. They were pretty sick, and I was the only one who remained pretty much healthy the entire time, so I had to take care of both my wife and my daughter for her first sickness, and it was quite a lot. And don't worry, if you're looking for Cosmere content is on the horizon, but this video had to come out at least as soon as I could for a very special reason that I'll get to a little bit later in the video. And while we're doing a whole preamble anyway, I want to thank Paizo for sending me Battlecry for the sake of review. This is not a paid video, though, so all thoughts and opinions here are my own. And even if it was a paid video, I wouldn't accept any contracts that wouldn't let me speak freely about the product. I care way too much about TTRPGs to worry about anything like that. And it's a credibility thing, you know, especially when it comes to a hobby like ours, like for real. I'm sure tons of you are tired of people kind of just pitching everything they can because, to be honest, TTRPG content creators don't make a lot of money, so we kind of get what we can. And as much as I would be loved to be getting paid a lot of money, those deals aren't coming through, so, you know. And honestly, as of right now, Pathfinder 2nd Edition is still my favorite TTRPG. I'm still looking for a better one, but, you know, it's just that good of a game. Anyway, on to the Captain. So the Captain is interesting because it makes use of a new type of minion called followers. Followers are just essentially the people version of animal companions or construct companions. That's more or less it, and they're balanced around that. And I have a lot to say about that, but we'll get to that. First, let's go ahead and take a look at the dedication. So the dedication first requires that you have a charisma bonus of +2. Pretty easy to do right out the gate. And you cannot have an animal companion, construct companion, or any other companion that functions similarly, except, it doesn't say here, but it mentions it in the Necrologist, the undead horde that you get through Necrologist. Essentially, it kind of counts as a follower for all intents and purposes, but that does mean if you do have Necrologist first for whatever reason, you don't gain a follower right out the gate. Or there's just the weird wording here. I'll bring up the Necrologist one, or at least the section that mentions it. So it says, if you have something like the Captain archetype, this counts as a follower if you take the additional follower feat. So I don't know if you have to take Captain first and then take Necrologist. That feels overly clunky. And to be fair, I don't think the two work super well together anyway. But anyway, I just figured I'd make mention of it. More or less, charisma +2, and you can't already have a follower or a minion of a companion type. So with that, then we gain the benefits. You become trained in your choice of diplomacy or intimidation, and those are two very, very important skills to this. You're going to need to increase these skills to get the benefit of later feats, as you have to have either one or another one as a prerequisite later. So getting trained in them is pretty good. And you also gain your choice of group impression or group coercion, obviously based on which of those two choices you made before. Group impression for diplomacy or group coercion for intimidation. And if you already have both of these skill feats as well, if you already have both of those skills, then you get to choose another one of which you qualify for. So all well and good. No worry about any loss of efficiency when picking up the dedication. You also gain the assistance of a dedicated follower who has agreed to accompany you on your journeys. They have the minion trait and they begin as a novice follower. We'll get into followers. I kind of want to do the feats first and then talk about followers, because I have thoughts about followers, even though I do like the Captain archetype. And we also have a special benefit here. Once you have a follower, you can never take a feat or class feature that grants an animal companion or another companion that prevents you from having an animal companion. So that conflicts with Necrologist, even though Necrologist then says it can work as long as you take the additional follower feat, which, by the way, is the next feat, so you might as well talk about it. it gives you an additional follower. That's kind of cool, kind of interesting. And you can take this additional times up to a maximum of 4 followers. So if you have an undead horde, 3 followers and an undead horde, and then there's special rules for multiple followers, which more or less a super clunky rule that means you can't have an active follower or more than one active follower at a time. I have no idea how this works with undead horde. I'm just going to assume you can have a follower and undead horde at the same time. I don't think there's any mechanical reasons why they don't work. It's just, and technically the undead horde is not a follower, but it can count as a follower for all intents and purposes. And then the most obtuse thing that this game is just kind of well known for at this point, which is the call follower exploration ability, which allows you to spend a full minute swapping out one of your followers with another one. Apparently, your other followers always follow at least a minute away from the rest of your group. And so you have to flag them down to let them know that you're swapping out people for some reason. Again, I have things I want to say about followers and how this archetype is just so funky and so weird. But let's get to the rest of the feats, and then we can talk about how it kind of all comes together. So, after additional follower, we get experienced follower. This is essentially the same thing as how your animal companions grow. Essentially, they do more damage, get better stats, all this other kind of stuff. And in addition to this, similar to how animal companions work, even if you don't command your follower, which operates the same way that it does for animal companions, a singular action, they get 2 of their own actions, all that kind of stuff. But now, even if you don't command them, they get an additional action to stride or strike. They can do this at any point during your turn, as long as you aren't currently taking an action. If they do, that's all the actions they get for that round. You can't direct them later. So essentially, more or less, you can't get the extra benefits for not commanding them if you decide to later command them during your turn. So it makes a lot of sense. I'm glad they wrote it out here to make it a little bit more clear for people, but it also just kind of feels a little redundant. But maybe that's just me. Next, we have Leader of All. This is a very interesting one. So this allows you to take followers from any common ancestry. So normally, all the followers currently in the book are human followers, because humans are the most common ancestry on Galarian, and thus they're all humans. But now with Leader of All, we can take another ancestry, and when we do so, we gain their traits, their size, speeds, languages, and other special abilities listed in their ancestry. So, for example, if you have an elf follower, then they have a movement speed of 30 feet, which is beneficial. And honestly, when it comes to followers, there's no point to having a human over an elf, because an elf is almost faster, and followers don't use the ancestry hit points or attribute boosts and flaws, so it's just kind of like base speed stuff. So again, like elves are really good, or maybe even a large follower who can attack and do things. Followers don't have a lot of health, I gotta say. They level up at the same rate as you do, but they get a base amount of hit points equal to whatever their type is, plus 6 per level. So, for instance, like a Berserker starts with 8 and then gains 6 per level. All of them gain 6 per level, which means they don't have a lot of scaling. To be fair, they're not heroic individuals. They're your common individuals who are following you because you are just that charismatic and, all this kind of stuff. Very interesting. I really like it. And Leader of All is really good, and they do have an additional mention of follower ancestries here that kind of just talks about where this can just be a freely given feat if the DM deems it necessary, as long as, I like this part they mention here, they aren't concerned with players choosing to avoid human followers in favor of more mechanically powerful options, because humans suck. So they understand how people will want to use this, and the GM can decide whether or not they get the benefit. Honestly, in my games, I would probably just nix this, or at the very least, make it all the common ancestries, and then uncommon and rare ancestries you need Leader of All for, which, makes a lot of sense to me. But honestly, no matter how you slice it, it's going to be the same either way, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. Then next up, we have Cadre. This requires that you're expert in either diplomacy or intimidation. And essentially what happens is that your followers get to help you whenever the GM deems it necessary. So whenever you're in an environment where your cadre could reasonably assist you, then you gain a +1 circumstance bonus to all skill checks to craft, create forgeries, earn an income, and subsist, as well as other downtime activities at the GM's discretion. Your cadre can also help you train, making retrain faster than normal. For every 5 days you spend retraining, you make a week's worth of progress. That is interesting. If you're playing a very hardcore game, that might be really good. I don't know. This is all for downtime activities, so I'm not particularly too bothered by this, and it answers a really good question where it's like, can my followers help? In this case, yes. Yes, they can. So, there you go. A really good feat, but I feel like this should just be a rule that you could do anyway. I don't feel like a feat choice is worth this, but I will make mention this is a skill feat rather than just a archetype feat. So you don't need to worry about this taking a class feat / free archetype feat. This is an additional skill feat. And honestly, as far as skill feats are concerned, we don't have enough good ones for me to worry about this taking up one of those kind of slots. So cadre, I think, is good. I think it's a little bit not necessary, but you know, that's just me. Then we have tactical guidance. This one's actually really cool. So you can spend 2 actions to direct your follower instead of 1 to give them an additional action. This can be really good because followers actually have some very good actions that animal companions and the like don't normally have. And so something like this is very beneficial in some very unique circumstances. Again, something we'll cover in a little bit. Next up, we have veteran follower. This is just the higher version of a follower. They just get more stats, which is pretty good. Then we have coordinated tactics. This is a really good one, honestly, especially if you're a melee class, because whenever you and your active follower are adjacent to the same foe, you're both considering flanking that foe no matter what your actual positions are. So essentially, your companion allows you to constantly flank an enemy. This is really good, and this just, again, gives you that off-guard condition pretty much as possible. So if you are going a very frontliner build and maybe you have a very, like, not melee-heavy team, this is probably a really necessary pick. Then we have exceptional follower, where they get even better stats. And all these actually do come with additional abilities as well, which, again, I'll mention a little bit later. And then we have legendary leaders. A legendary leader requires that you are legendary in either diplomacy or intimidation. And if you notice, there was no master one. So we have essentially an expert and legendary prerequisite. Not too bad, but it doesn't really change the fact that you're going to need legendary in these anyway if you want to get all the feats anyway. So legendary leader is okay. So whenever you make your first attempt to coerce or make an impression on an intelligent creature, the DM rolls a DC 11 flat check to see if they've heard of you, and your exploits can give you a bonus, giving you a +2 circumstance bonus to the skill check in question. And the GM can even adjust the flat check based on appropriate circumstances, making it, depending on if you're more or less known in a region. Pretty interesting, but you know, I think a GM would just do that anyway. Also, in addition, you can earn an income pretty much anywhere when you use either the diplomacy or intimidation skill, whichever you prerequisite this one for, to earn an income. And when you do so, you get a +2 circumstance bonus or +3 if you had the cadre feat from before. So legendary leader sounds like it would be really cool, except it's, 1, mostly downtime stuff, 2, uses a skill feat that most of the time people don't use, like group coercion or group impression. And to be fair, it does work on just normal coerce or make an impression checks, which can be good. And I do love the roleplay of this, though, because it's all about your reputation, which is really cool. And essentially, no matter where you go, people will want to hire your services for something, which is kind of interesting and can lead to some interesting story stuff. And then the last feat, a level 20 feat, we have Peerless Captain, which gives you an additional action every round. Well, you become quickened, and with this quickened action, you can only use it to direct your follower. So an extra action to direct follower. Not bad. I mean, if you have no other good feat at level 20 to select, then sure. This is pretty much only if you're using the free archetype rule, I'm going to be completely honest. And even then, that's if you just did not take any more interesting feats, because while that is a good action, I mean, just extra action economy essentially for a level 20 feats, for a feat in general, I just can't really see it being used all too much. Honestly, I would love to see, like maybe in Pathfinder, 3rd edition or whatever, I like to see feats like this around level 10 or 11. One, because players just don't get to this point in the game too often at level 20, but two, that's when it would feel the best to get that extra action. And it's not like it's an extra action that would, break the game. It's a little bit extra efficiency to use a creature that's not as good as your hero to do things. So just getting that for free every round does just sound better, honestly. And it would feel more fun, in my opinion. Granted, for all the balance kind of like judges out there who are so just like white knighting Paizo's balance decisions, I gotta say that just like in practice, I played a lot of Pathfinder, and I'll tell you, in practice, it wouldn't make that big a deal. I would, a feat for sure, I'd make it a feat. But at level 10, I think it would be just as good, if not better, because at level 21, I just probably wouldn't select the feat. And two, you barely get to play the game at level 20. So for a feat that just makes this feel overall better, I mean, heck, even 14 or something, just something. Anyway, so sorry for the rant there. And be warned, more ranting is coming. But before we get to that, I want to let you guys know about something really cool. So I was actually reached out to by Misty Mountain Gaming to review a product that they were recently launching as of the making of this video, and probably like sent yesterday from when this video is coming out. And they're working with Paizo to make some cool paraphernalia for the game. More specifically, I got their really cool cat eye dice. I know the camera's not gonna like this too much. And they're actually really good, weighty dice. And I gotta thank them a lot for sending this out to me. I didn't even know they were sending me the dice. They said, be ready for a shirt, which I didn't get, but I did get their dice. And they sent it to me in this cool little box here. It looks like it was from their booth at Gen Con this year, but regardless, it's a nice little box. And they're really good dice, and they're gemstone dice. Anyway, go check out using the link in the description, or from the rest of the video here, I'm going to leave in this little corner here a QR code you can scan to jump to the page where they're currently on discount for shirts, backpacks, sweaters, stickers, and the dice I already mentioned. And another really cool thing about Misty Mountain Gaming's gemstone dice is they have a lifetime warranty. So any chips, cracks, breaks, or scratches, they'll cover you for it. It's really good. And something you might notice is if you go to their webpage, you'll see my face up there with other content creators as people who are currently showing off these products. They're really cool. I do hope I get my shirt so I can actually show it off. But they're doing stuff for both Pathfinder 2nd Edition and for Starfinder 2nd Edition. And they got a lot of really cool products. And if their dice are anything to judge based off of, the quality of their products are probably going to be really good. I'm genuinely excited for this. I'm excited to see what else they do. And if the only thing I'm sad about is I couldn't do for both Pathfinder and Starfinder, because if I did Starfinder, I would get their glass dice set for Starfinder that also looks really, really cool. So go ahead, check them out using this QR code or in the link down below, and yeah, enjoy. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about followers. Followers are super interesting because they're a different type of companion that can do things that other companions really can't. Now, in the direct follower action, essentially you gain as soon as you get a follower, it's all the same stuff. It's a singular action that gives them 2 actions to kind of do whatever. Now, officially, what they can do is they can crawl, drop prone, escape, interact, leap, release, seek, sense motive, stand, step, stride, and strike. These are the actions they have. And they can only use the strikes listed in their stat blocks. They can't use any additional strikes. So they can't, for instance, if they're using a bow, they can't punch people, which makes sense, even though it kind of doesn't make sense. And we'll get to that here in a moment. And in addition, you can also send them to use their unique actions found on their sheets, which are, some of them anyway, being really, really good. And unlike animal companion support actions, they're not listed in a way that interrupts how their other actions work. They're just other actions they can take. So overall, this feels like an improvement on the animal companion kind of setup that's just a little bit easier and a little bit more free-flowing. In addition, they get some unique benefits when they're helping you in both exploration mode and in downtime. Now, in exploration mode, it mentions specifically they can avoid notice, hustle, or follow the expert to avoid notice. Alternatively, you can use your exploration activity to direct your follower to follow the expert, investigate, scout, or search, or use any of the exploration actions in the player core. Now, I don't remember, and I don't think animal companions really get all this kind of stuff. And to be fair, like, even if they did, there's just a lot of things that followers can do that honestly animal companions really can't. Followers are just people. They can pick things up, they can open doors, all that kind of stuff. They can't use items, and this is kind of a big sticking point I'm going to get to here in a moment. And unless you have the cadre ability in downtime, they kind of just go out and do their own thing. So then we move to the follower versus non-companion NPCs. And this is just where Paizo lifts the veil and tells you, yeah, these rules don't make sense for people who have free will and all that kind of stuff, because they're designed to be compared to animal companions or any other companions of the same type. So, that being said, they don't make a lot of narrative sense. And this is something that, like, I think the captain is interesting. I love the idea of how it's implemented into the game. And I don't know if there's a better way to do it. And that's just how I'm going to state it honestly. But this is something that I think is going to annoy people. It's going to bother people, especially because your companions can't do things like feeding you a elixir of life or using a scroll of healing or a lot of different kinds of things. Like, this is going to drive people up the wall, and I guarantee most tables are just going to homebrew that they can do all those things, and your companions are just kind of squishier PC characters, more or less. And I think that's generally fine. One, because if the GM can, is angry enough about it, they can just kill them. It's not too hard to do. As we already talked about before, their stats are not super good for survivability. Kind of a dick move, but it's hard because Pathfinder kind of prides itself on its balance, and that's what a lot of people kind of vouch for what its best qualities are. But this is kind of just one of those things where balance is kind of getting in the way of the narrative and the overall flow of the game. It's just not going to make sense. And I know a lot of tables out there are already kind of just using non-companion NPCs in their groups anyway, that the GM mostly gets to interact or get to use on their behalf. So is this a better option than that? What I like about the system is if you don't think too hard about it, followers are just an interesting form of companions, and thus it can give you a different flair. And they do have some very substantial differences between them and animal companions and construct companions. Predominantly hands, which allow them to do some very important things. So overall, I'm going to say that this all makes sense. It all works really, really well. And while I definitely think that a lot of the degrees of which Paizo goes to overbalance these kind of options can feel excessive, I think it's that excessiveness that overall keeps the game feeling the way it does, which is pretty good. And so I generally appreciate it. But, despite everything I've just been talking about, let's take a look at one of the followers to show you exactly what you're getting. What's the biggest bang for your buck? So starting off, let's take a look at the Sharpshooter here. So the Sharpshooter they use a bow, They have a 60-foot range increment, which means they can pretty much be on most battlefields and be effective without needing to worry about going past their range increment, and it keeps them pretty safe. So in addition to this, their base damage is just a flat D6. That is worse than animal companions. But they are using a range weapon that doesn't normally get stats, so that's pretty good. And if you're using something like the Berserker, which I'll just show on screen here real quick, the Berserker gets a D10, and they also add +3 for their strength modifier. So more or less, they have stats, you use their stats as you would on your character sheet. All well and good. In addition to all this, they start with 4 hit points plus 6 per level. Woof. They're very, very squishy, so they definitely want to be in the back line. And then for AC benefits, they are considered trained, and they have an item bonus of +1 and a dex cap of +4. Essentially, they wear leather armor, and they really use their dex, which their dex can get to a +4, so they can get the biggest benefit out of this. So I do feel like the way this is presented will confuse some people, because it's dex cap +4. It should be like in parentheses, dex +3 at novice or something like that. And then they are trained in acrobatics, hunting lore, and stealth. And since they use your level modifier, essentially they just are considered the same as if you had acrobatics, hunting, stealth, and you had their same stat allocation. A lot of this you can piece together yourself for sure, though this is going to be a little bit complicated. So for newer players, I would caution against going with a follower, at least at first. And then they gain the follower ability called Take Aim. They take aim at their foe and make a range strike, gaining a +2 circumstance bonus to the attack roll. Essentially, if the only thing you want them to do is to attack on their turn, you might as well just amp up their accuracy and make them take aim with their 2 actions. Making Sharpshooters a really simple follower to make use out of, and just some good additional damage. Since their attacks don't apply to your multi-attack penalty, this is just a really good way to have some extra damage on the battlefield for very little cost, honestly. Then when you get the experienced follower feature, then you get the experience advancement, which increases their dexterity to +4 and their wisdom to +3, meaning now they get their full AC bonus that they can possibly get. And then you increase their proficiency rank in fortitude saves and reflex to expert. So yes, they do indeed gain additional proficiencies in things, which is really good. And you increase their damage from a d6 to 2d6. So the same kind of scaling that animal companions have. And when a creature takes damage from a sharpshooter's range strike, it takes a -5 circumstance penalty to its speed for 1 round, or a -10 if the attack was a critical hit. That's really cool. So Sharpshooter, just at base, just flat, does speed penalties to enemies that they hit, which is really, really good. Then we have their veteran advancement. This increases their constitution, their intelligence, and their charisma, so filling out their other stats, and increases their item bonus to +2. In addition, their proficiency rank in perception goes to expert, which is very handy. And as well for their skills, they get acrobatics, hunting lore, and stealth to expert as well. And they also become an expert at intimidation, so that comes up here. Increase their proficiency rank in their short bow strikes to expert and give them a +1 item bonus to attack rolls with their short bow strikes. Their strikes deal 2 additional damage and become magical for the purposes of ignoring resistances. So as you can see here, generally speaking, they are just getting essentially as if they were leveling along with the party at just much lower stat amounts, pretty much. And in addition to this as well, when they use their take aim ability, they also ignore the target's concealment. And then finally, we have their exceptional advancements. This increases their dex modifier to +5, their constitution modifier to +3, their wisdom modifier to +4, and their charisma to +3. And you increase their AC item bonus to +3. You increase their proficiency ranks in reflex saves, will saves to master, and fortitude to expert. You give them a +1 item bonus for all item saving throws, essentially the same as an armor rune. Increase their proficiency rank in acrobatics to master, and increase their item bonus to attack rolls with their short bow strikes to +2, increasing their short bow strike damage from 2d6 to 3d6, and increasing their additional damage from short bows to 2/4. And the Sharpshooter learns a new action called Following Shot. It's a free action it can take once per turn with a trigger based on if it critically hits with a ranged strike. The Sharpshooter is wielding a bow that is a reload 0. I don't know if they can wield anything else, to be fair. And then the effect is, bolstered by their success, the Sharpshooter quickly takes another shot. They make another ranged strike with the same weapon at the same multi-attack penalty. This attack still counts towards the Sharpshooter's multi-attack penalty. Following Shot is just really good because they're going to just use take aim, so they're likely to hit with their first shot at the very least, and if they get a crit, which is not too unlikely at the very least, then they just get a free shot at no penalty. So yeah, this is really cool. I actually really like followers. I like the idea of the follower. Followers are interesting because they feel like they're actually progressing with the players in a way that feels a little bit better than how other companions have up until this point. Like I said, I feel like this is an evolution of the design of animal companions, and followers are really good. Now, I do believe animal companions in general are just better if you're playing very combat heavy games, just because there's more feats and abilities related to animal companions. And I do feel like just in general, they do more damage. But what makes followers really interesting is, like, they have like 7 or so followers in the book currently. Sorry, 5 or so followers in the book. I miscounted. And there's so much room to just add more followers in future books, making this just another thing that Paizo can just toss into a book to make it more interesting. And followers, I feel like, have much more narrative interest because they're actual people. You can talk to them. Animal companions, sure, can be a part of your character's story, but rarely, not always, but rarely, your animal companions really can't talk back with you. So this allows you to really have an interesting playstyle with interesting kinds of minions that can have just a lot more story and narrative behind them. I really like the Captain. I think this is a really cool archetype, and I really love to see this kind of design from Paizo. I think it's all really good. It's just, it can feel a little clunky at times due to how overall Paizo balances Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Love it or hate it, it's what keeps the game going, and so I'm not going to balk too much at it. I just figured I'd make mention of it because I definitely would feel even my players will probably rub rough against this kind of stuff. But I don't know, let me know your thoughts down below. And again, wanting to thank Misty Mountain Gaming for giving me my dice, and I really hope that you all go and check out their website. At the very least, they got some really cool stuff there. So, use the QR code, or they're in the description. You can go ahead and click one of their links there. But that's going to be it for me. Thank you all so much for watching. Good luck with your games. Leave the bad luck to me, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.